How much of the discord that we see in the West at the moment do you think is self-generated by polarization because social media and echo chambers and blah, blah? And how much do you think are seeds that are sown by foreign actors, China and Russia and such like?
Yeah, so I mean, I can confidently say from experience that most of the noise that we hear is internally generated. The whole idea that foreign actors create narratives that cause discord is proven false in many ways. It's in case studies, it's in books that people just don't read. But it's also it violates the core strategy and covert influence isn't to create a new narrative. It's very hard to create a narrative that anybody hears. The way that you actually cause discord or sow miscontent is by just adding fuel to an existing fire. So whether you're Russia or China or Iran or whoever, when you want to cause conflict in the United States, all you do is add fuel to the existing fire. There's no lack of fires that people can add issue to, right? Whether it's the Snowden debate, or whether it's the WikiLeaks debate, or whether it's gender, or whether it's woke, or whether it's sex, or whether it's, whatever. I just found out about something called incel recently. There's 1,000 different things that you can just pay a marketing company to put a few extra ads out there that say incel is the worst thing ever and women should adhere to men. And then you pay the same marketing agency to send a second message that says, women are equals and, men who complain about women are dogs. And then boom, all you're doing is just pouring fuel on an existing fire.
I had a conversation a couple of months ago with a friend, Gwinder Bogle, and he's got an idea around fire hosing that in the modern age, it's so difficult to convince anybody of any particular one narrative. So the goal is to bombard people with so many narratives that they become despondent and nihilistic and give up. Because at that point, they are the most easy to sway into one particular. You have two responses, basically. It's the, kick a dog. Does the dog bite or does it give up? Well, either of those, when you don't deal with the biting, that's fantastic. That's going to be looting and riots and issues and whatnot. And then the despondency as well is going to make for an easier country to roll over too.
Yeah, it's interesting because the strategic benefit of it overall is still kind of in the theoretical stages. We've never seen in history a country that's able to just roll over another country by just devastating them culturally. Like cultural subversion is a theory with lots of real world evidence, but no real world proof of execution. Right. So I agree with you. But then there's also the element of the fact that we're also all still, as much as we hate to admit it, we're all still adapting to a digital era. We're all still getting used to what it's like to have smartphones and smart TVs and, you name it, smart watches. So we are choosing to let ourselves be bombarded with information, but we're also choosing what information bombards us. So yes, we could put out 1,000 different narratives, but the algorithms in YouTube and social media and whatever else are only going to feed you the narratives that you engage with the most. So then you're going to become the most engaged with the narratives that you see the most frequently, which are the narratives that you already believe in the most. So that's exactly the problem with America. It's that once you've told YouTube what kind of content you like, they don't give you any other content. They only give you what you like. Once you tell Twitter what hashtags you like, that's what they keep feeding you whenever they want to suggest someone you might like. Nobody ever suggests the counter point of view, so it just drives this continued wedge between everyone.
One of my friends says that if you want to see into somebody's soul and work out who they truly are, look at their YouTube suggested videos. And I don't think that it's too far wrong. The algorithm on YouTube is the most accurate, as far as I can see, of serving me content. Every time I go on YouTube, there is 5 videos that I add to my watch later playlist because I think, that's perfect. And that's, brilliant. World War II in numbers, how Hitler defeated the whatever. Yeah, that's perfect for me. And then there's something about MMA and whatever. One of the things that I find is kind of an interesting contribution here is that when we think about our relationship to technology and the difficulty that we have around marrying all of this together, I think not having a common enemy causes us to have nothing to band together about as well, especially when the enemy is internal. Because the tribalism, you see tribes relatively all the time, they're splitting off, fracturing. This group was against that group, but now this part of that first group is part of another part of that same first group, and that seems to be a very good way to waste the time of a country in not making progress towards anything meaningful culturally by constantly just repeating similar cycles and fighting against itself. Or
just letting a country distract itself, right? So I don't know if you have kids, I don't know if you've got nieces or nephews or anything, but anybody with children knows that sometimes the best way to give yourself a break from the kids is to just let them distract themselves. Just give them, if you give a 6-year-old an iPad and you tell them they can watch whatever they want to on YouTube, they will distract themselves and you won't hear from them for hours, right? If you give any kid under the age of 9, if you give them a bucket of toys, even if it's just the toys from the neighbor's house next door, if you give them a bucket of toys they've never played with before, they'll distract themselves. Essentially, that's all a country really has to do, is just give the tools to one country to distract itself. And in that process, they kind of, they're free. If you're hearing background noise, I'm in DC, so there's all these, it's like helicopter central. You got the president and the Congress people flying all over the place all the time, so it's just helicopter city.
Very nice. I was in Long Island. Is that the one in New York?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes, I was in Long Island start of the year. I cannot believe the volume of planes. It's every 90 seconds, pretty much 24 hours a day, pretty much 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do you live here? What? And apparently it's really, really nice, and it was beautiful, and I enjoyed my time there. But that's intense. That is intense flight path. So it's something else that I was thinking about, and this really came up to me when last year, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and I'm a Brit. I was 12, I think, when 9/11 happened. It hit home to me the way that it must have had such an impact on the lives of America, with some of the documentaries that were done. Some of the video footage that I'd never seen before, some of the testimony of the FDNY guys that had been going in, and I was on one side of a door and I got down this set of stairs, and my best friend who I'd worked with for 20 years was on the other side of a door, and he's not with us anymore. Just so many. It was really, really moving. I thought it was an amazing way to sort of show tribute and re-educate people about what had happened, especially people perhaps that hadn't even been around, And something that I found pretty interesting is the modern confusion around the word conspiracy. Every time that somebody brings up the term conspiracy online, there is a whole bunch of comments that'll say something like, well, yesterday's conspiracy is today's top news headline. And it does seem like the word conspiracy can be used to discredit genuine stories that powerful groups don't want to gain steam. It can be used to create stories that misdirect people away from things that genuinely are true. That just fascinated me, thinking about that, especially looking back last year.
Yeah, I have a YouTube video out there that teaches people the anatomy of a conspiracy.
Teach us, tell us.
Well, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but there's essentially just a few core ingredients, right? So first, there has to be something that happens. There has to be some factual event, something that's evidentiary, something you can see, you can touch, you can hear, whatever it might be.
Has to be a kernel of truth somewhere.
Yeah, that's how everything has to start, with a kernel of truth. But then what happens is immediately after that, there has to be a lack of information. So there has to be an element of truth that's immediately followed by a lack of information. Now, what happens cognitively is the human brain wants closure. The human brain always wants to close every open loop of reasoning. So when you hear something that's truthful, right, there's an unidentified object in the sky, right? Then there's a gap of information. Well, what was it? Was it a plane? We don't know. Was it a helicopter? We don't know. There's no information about what it was. Now, the human brain doesn't like that. So the human brain starts to seek possibilities. So the third ingredient in a conspiracy has to be a series of potential explanations. Now, in that series of potential explanations, here's what ends up happening. we forget that we're just going through a series of potentialities. And we start to think instead that the potentialities are in fact the explanation. And then we start to enforce the explanation that we believe explains the original kernel of truth. That's how a conspiracy is born. So the Twin Towers are destroyed in 9/11. 2 airplanes crash into them. There's all sorts of kernels of truth out there that let us know it's real. But then there's this break in information. How did the pilots get training, and how did they organize this whole thing, and how did the police not find out, and how did CIA and FBI not find out, and then even when there's an explanation about how CIA and FBI didn't communicate effectively, there's still lots of information that people don't get. We want to know what intels were out there, we want to know what sources were out there, but they don't get that information. So then they start saying, well, why is nobody sharing? What could be in that information? Oh, it was an inside job. They don't want to admit that there was an element inside the U.S. government that wanted this to happen, or there, whatever else. It was the Israelis, and they don't want to let they don't want to tell anybody that's the Israelis. So these crazy, I call them crazy, but these conclusions, these estimations pop up in the absence of information, and then people are like, if it was an inside job, they would have been able to keep it secret because they control all their own information, right? And then all the if-thens start, and the if-thens on their own are valid. Right? If you wanted to cover something up, here's how you would do it. If it was the Mormons that did it, then this is how they would cover it up. Whatever it is, it would all be in there. So because this reasoning is sound and this fact is sound, the conspiracy exists, even though nobody is accounting for the fact that there's nothing connecting the two sides that are reasoned and well thought out. And without something to connect the two, there's no foundation in truth.
Every single morning for over 3 years now, I've started my day the exact same way, which is with Element in water. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it is the best hydration drink that I've ever found. It tastes fantastic. It's super refreshing. Orange is just the most OP flavor in the world. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it helps to play a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue. It regulates your appetite, it optimizes brain health, and it helps curb cravings. They're also the exclusive hydration partner to Team USA weightlifting and relied on by tons of Olympic athletes and everyday high performers all around the world. Also, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy where you can buy a box completely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they will give you a refund during an unlimited duration, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Element are giving away a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box if you go to the link in the description box below, or drinklmnt.com/MW. That's drinklmnt.com/MW.
What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe.